Welcome to the PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Welcome back to another episode of The PA is In. You know that we love to feature PAs who have strange, interesting, intriguing career paths. How about a PA who is the first PA to ever join the White House Fellowship? Our guest today is the first and only PA who has ever gone through the White House Fellowship, where she had access to high-level administration meetings at the White House and influenced policy decisions relative to medicine in general and also the PA profession. I cannot wait to dive in and share this exciting and interesting career path with you. Without further ado, here she is, Vanessa Cobarrubia. Vanessa, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for having me.
I would love it if you could take a minute to introduce yourself to our listeners, tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Cobarrubia. I am a PA like you guys. I actually am the first PA to be accepted into the White House Fellowship. A little background on me. I began my career in the ER, was present when COVID hit my area. Some fun facts of my area, we're about 1.4 million people. The unhealthiest region of the United States of America. You can Google my neighboring city, McAllen, Texas. It's the fattest city in the U.S. So 1.4 million people. We had a triad of, the hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. And for 1.4 million people, we had 48 ICU beds. That was it. So we were on national news quite a bit. Then my ER group left the hospital. I ended up going to the COVID hospital in El Paso, Texas. It was an overflow of all their hospitals' COVID cases. It was an amazing experience. There were physicians and providers from all over the world. I was trained how to distribute the monoclonal antibody, and they sent me back home in deep South Texas. My doc quit in a week, and this girl, who was a year out of school, was in charge of distributing. We did about over 13,000 monoclonal antibody infusions by the time I was done. The story goes, I was needing meds. My patient load it was about 200 patients a week, and I was sent 20 meds. And so I was calling anybody and everybody in the state of Texas. And one Saturday morning, the congressman needed a COVID PCR test, and he knew the pharmacist that I worked with. And so the pharmacist called me and said, "Hey, you need to come over," and with wet hair, like today. I went over there and I said, "Sir, I need meds. I have 1.4 million people," and I spat all the meds at him. And he just looked at me kind of puzzled, and he said, "Vanessa, my wife is the director of the White House Fellowship." And on my brain, I said, "Dude, you haven't listened to one word I said. I need meds. What are you doing?" And I just outside, I said, "Congratulations, sir. That's absolutely wonderful. I'm very proud. You must be so proud." And he said, "No, I'm telling you because I think you should apply." And I said, "Oh." And I had a week to apply. It's a 6-month process. It's about 30 interviews. And I ended up at the Office of the First Lady and the Department of Health and Human Services.
Wow. So tell us more. I have never heard of the White House Fellowship. So tell us what it is, what's the duration, and sort of once you got in, what that looked like.
So for 1 year, you get plopped out of your profession and you get put in the highest levels of government. The purpose of the fellowship, it actually was created right around the PA profession. So yes, I'm happy that we finally got a PA in there, but I'm like, we're a little late. We should have a lot more of us present and have a voice in those places. You get plopped into these offices. So when they're making policies, you can advise them on what it's like in the real world. I mean, I will tell you in DC, people who make policy, they have the greatest intentions, but they're in an ivory tower sometimes. And so when they're putting pen to paper, you're able to come in and strategically operational say, you know what, that's great, but we need to make some changes in this area or whatever it may be. It's a variety of people, some people in medicine up to NYPD, people in the armed forces. And I was shared between two places. That's kind of uncommon, but it was really needed. I needed to experience the agency as well as the White House. I needed to experience HHS as a provider. As PAs, you'll love to hear this story. One time I met with a department, and they were showing me all these funding programs they have within them, and they said, it was just like nurse practitioner, and here's this funding. And I looked at them and I said, y'all realize I'm a PA. And where are programs? And so I was very grateful for those moments to sit at the table and really highlight our profession. I always tell my story, but I always say, number one, my peers who are in the PCP world, those are my heroes, more than ER, because we don't get so much autonomy because you have insurance agencies telling you how to practice medicine, and it's so unfair. And so much more work has to be put into it. And so although I tell my story, I tell the story of our profession, right? Of the heroes that we have. We would have been lost in the pandemic without PAs. Although I am biased, we're trained so differently. I see it. I see the value of a PA in every specialty that I've had to work with. And now I feel like I'm still watching a movie. I've been at the highest levels of government, and now I'm at an immigration shelter, so I'm back in clinical setting, and I'm sitting back saying, okay, what can I do next? What's my next step to help our profession grow, but more so have equality in our practices as other professions? And how do I help our profession realize the importance of advocacy for ourselves?
I feel like this is an area that PAs, we sort of came in and just hit the ground practicing and skipped that step of figuring out how do we advocate for ourselves. And I'm not sure if that's because our profession was born from advocacy of others saying, hey, we need to fill this gap. And so we grew up to meet that gap. What have you learned having been in these rooms and sitting at these tables? What are some of the most shocking or eye-opening things that you maybe didn't know about our profession beforehand that now you feel like all the listeners need to know about where we are from a policy or from a profession standpoint?
I think one thing that really opened my eyes, I was invited to a PA doctoral summit. There's discussion on whether our PA profession should have a doctorate degree. As you know, every other profession, OTs, PTs, pharmacists, have that option to continue their education. Although I'm very bipartisan, my program, by the way, it was bipartisan, so I still stay in that sort of arena. Although I can, and I can see both pros and cons to it. But at this summit, we needed more representation of those of us that don't have the doctorate, in my opinion. And we need to know certain things. So some fun facts, guys. Number one, when you graduate as a PA, we average 120 credit hours. When a nurse practitioner graduates with a doctoral degree, they have about 80 credit hours. So right away, we're coming out of with just a master's with a lot more education than our doctoral peers. I've seen that if you want to make more changes, if you want to be a part of the C group or the C office or how do they call it? I don't. C-suite. There we go. The C-suite area. Sometimes we're overlooked because we don't have the doctoral degree. Now, at the same time, clinically, I don't think we need it. And many of my peers say, I don't want it. What would it do for me? And I respect that opinion, and I respect their stance on that. But if some of us want to continue in that area, like me, I want to make a difference overall. I love being in the clinic, and this is the reason why I went to DC. I love being in the clinic, but I hate that we're on a hamster wheel. I feel like we're on a hamster wheel in medicine. And so I've got to get off of this hamster wheel to look at the hamster wheel and how does this operate so I can get everybody in maybe a better hamster wheel, you know.
Yeah, I think zooming out to say, hey, when you're in it, this sucks, but also, why does it suck? Or what are the things that are making it so hard for patients to get what they want, or so hard for providers to make the choices that they think that patient needs? Why are we limited by the insurance access? Why are we limited by prior auth? So what are the things that patients are regularly stubbing their toes on that are barriers between them and the care that they need? And how can we break down those barriers as a profession and also meet patients where they are? Because, in a perfect world, everyone has unlimited access and amazing, can get to all the specialists without having to wait. But everyone here who's referred someone to neurology or neurosurgery or dermatology knows that that's not how it actually works. Like, yes, I see something suspicious and that needs surgery or a biopsy. That's what should happen. But what actually happens is a super long delay, trouble finding a provider that's in network, ability to get there, and all of these things are standing between that patient and getting them to the clinician that they actually need to see.
Right. And you don't know the obstacles unless you're in the field. One thing I see across the board in different specialties and talking to different people and being at HHS is our EMR systems. In my brain, I'm like, why can't it work like this? Because I'm in the clinic setting and I want it to work so that I'm more efficient and effective with my patients, but as well as I don't have to be on the system so long and I can actually look at the patient and speak to them like a real person. And I think that's one of the strengths of the PA profession is we do treat our patients that way. I don't have to preach to the choir, but most patients will say, I'd rather see the PA because they spend more time with me. So there's a lot of work to be done.
I don't think anyone went into medicine because they loved charting, right? Like that is not
But it's also unfair because if you wanting the PA to see, I know my peers in the PCP world, they're seeing at least 40 patients a day. When do you do the charting? And how do we get to a position so that we're within our specialty say, okay, you know what, I'll see 40 patients, but hey, I want Fridays off, and because I don't know what happened to me, Tracy, after COVID. Let me tell you, when I was in COVID world, that's what I called it. I worked 112 days straight the first pat, and it was 12 and a half hour shifts every day. And the next one I worked 7 weeks straight, and it was 7 a.m. till 2 a.m. because I was infusing in clinic, and then I would hit the road because in my area, a lot of people don't have transportation. We don't have public transportation here. And so now my whole approach has completely changed. I am like, life is too short. And I don't have children myself, but I know on your podcast you talk about a lot with moms. My peers that are moms, and they say, well, my kid's going to the zoo. Go, I'll figure it out. I'll see your patients. I will, I tell them all the time, life is too short. We have to find that balance. I work in a clinic where two of my fellows ladies, they're super hardworking, and I pull them in and I say, go to the zoo. And as well as, but how do we get, and this was a discussion also in DC. They asked me, Vanessa, how do we address burnout? And my response was, well, it's not really burnout. What's happening is you're calling us providers to the same war over and over again, but you're not giving us new weapons. And we are not servicemen and women who are committed or contracted for so many years. So guess what? We're jumping ship. And unless you give them more tools, unless you understand that we need a more work-life balance, I don't blame them for leaving. I mean, I left for a year, and I'll tell you what, it really even opens your eyes even more to realize there's got to be some changes because we're continually going into a hole, and there's no coming out. And then how do you how do you recruit further generations to do it? I have parents tell me, my kid wants to go into medicine, and I say, well, if it's a calling, pray for them. But if it's not, tell them to go become a lawyer.
Yeah. And how do you say, with some moral fiber, hey, I do love it. Here's the good and the bad. Here's what I do love about it. It's been great to me. But, I have walked through burnout. I have felt taken advantage of by a healthcare system. I have, felt like the fact that I do feel called to practice medicine has made me vulnerable to having unfortunate boundaries and to saying, well, these patients need me. And instead of saying, these patients need someone, right? They need someone to take care of them. That someone does not necessarily have to be me. For me, that was a huge part of recovering from burnout, was figuring out what my own personal boundaries are with other people, what my work boundaries are. We just had this example of, we're hiring someone new for our office. We sat down and we said, hey, we're hiring an MA for our department. 2 providers should be here for the initial interview. If we love them, we'll bring them back for a second interview while they meet some of the admin team and the rest of the providers in the department. Scheduled an interview on a day that I don't work. And both of the clinicians that were going to be there said to me, you're coming, right? And I said, no, I'm not coming. And they said, why aren't you coming? I said, I'm off. And they said, well, we think you should come. And I said, I think I have better boundaries than that. And former me would have bent over backwards because I'm high control and because I want to be in that meeting and because I want to be, but also because I don't give a shit, but I also want everyone to like me.
And I think you verbalized it just how it needs to be. COVID made us aware that we need boundaries, because you're right. I worked 112 days straight because it's my community and that's all we had. But now I tell whatever setting I'm in, because I do different things, I say, nobody's dying. Everybody's be fine. And I had to work those hours because people were dying, like literally. So now I say, no, nobody's dying. And I think we all need to become self-aware of those little triggers. It took me a while. I think the fellowship really helped me talk about those COVID moments that I think we're going to all have to face. It'll be little sprinkles, and then maybe 10 years, it's going to be like, whoa, what did we go through? I didn't see them in the ICU dying, but my patients would come in sitting in the 60s, and I have to look at their families telling them, I can't infuse you, because at that time I had a criteria set by the state. And I told my staff one time, I said, just look the other way, just set them up and walk out. And they said, no. And I said, just go, because I knew the monoclonal antibody was all they had. That was their only fighting chance. And at that time, it was so new, the criteria was very strict. And so, and I still see that old man. I still see these old men in my mind some days. And I was at clinic one time and our wires got crossed and I didn't eat lunch. And it just like lit up a fire in me. I wasn't upset that I didn't eat lunch. I wasn't even hungry, but it was just, no, I'm going to eat lunch, because those days in COVID time, I didn't eat for days. I mean, I would go through my whole day and I would literally go to the back of the monoclonal, the antibody, the infusion center. I couldn't remember the word. And I would go back there, eat a taco, and head back on the floor, And so then that set me off. And I think we need to just recognize that, breathe in and breathe out. And also, again, really the fellowship helped me speak about it, because I was kind of angry. It was, going to DC, and I didn't know that. I mean, I had the burden of over 13,000 people on me. And I look at federal government and I say, help, how do we make things better? And I'm fortunate to have had that experience to decompress.
Finding the perfect gift for everyone on your list, well, it can be quite a challenge. And when you're a busy professional trying to choose thoughtful, high-quality, personalized gifts, you know that all too well. Thankfully, there's KML Expressions, a PA mom-owned business that can personalize almost anything. From ornaments to occupation-specific items for PAs and more, Crystal has got you covered. Don't even get me started on how cute her stuff is. Even the hardest people to buy for, there's a gift for them at KML. Head to the link in the show notes to place your order today. Every everyone who works in medicine has had an experience where you have been in survival mode, where it really was life and death, where truly you had to make a decision in that moment. You had to catch something, you had to order something, you had to do something that was a life-saving thing. But that's not something that is I think we very much normalized it. Like I am just like, I know exactly what that feels like. And some accountant out there is like, I don't know what that's like. Like, I don't know what it's like for my workday to include decisions about who gets a life-saving drug and who doesn't, about who gets intubated, about who gets scanned first, like about who gets prioritized in terms of coming back after they were triaged in the ER. Like all of these tiny decisions that we make in our own survival mode to keep everyone else surviving, you can't just go back to normal life. Like that has to change you. That is because we're human. And when we live through these experiences, we can never unring that bell. We can never go back to life before certain traumas, certain experiences. And the pandemic was a collective trauma. So everyone was affected by this, whether you were the person getting the infusion or the person deciding on whether that person qualified. So I think there's something to be said for this whole community mindset of we all did live through it together. Certainly everyone, I saw this quote once that was like, everyone's in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So we all lived through this trauma, but we didn't have the same lived experience of it. But that you can't just ignore that it happened. Like we have to say, this happened, this changed me and the way that I see the world, good, bad, or otherwise, and address that so that we can move forward with some more self-awareness, with maybe some more coping mechanisms. That doesn't solve everything, but saying that it happened and that we all lived through it and live to tell the tale is something to just sort of note as we're at this phase of our life and our career.
And you're right. I think we think it's normal, but I think that's why I really think advocacy work for our profession is where we need to go. And I don't know the road yet. I don't know how that's going to happen because at the same time, Tracy, I think all of us just love what we do. I love being in the clinic setting. I love being in front of my patient. So it's not in us to be wanting more because we love what we do. But at the same time, I will tell you, I got home and I was really blessed because, I didn't work for a year. So I said, well, what am I going to do next? And I always say, God, tell me what I'm going to do next. And when I got home, a lot of job offers were there to be a PA. And I looked back and although I have a grateful heart, please don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I'm like, y'all don't remember what I did? And I think, but I'm not anyone special. Y'all don't remember what the PAs in the ICU did? Y'all don't remember the PAs in PCP world who were outside in the middle of July in Texas testing? You don't remember what we did and we're still at the same pay scale? And our value hasn't increased? Come on now. And so it really has opened my eyes. And that's why, the involvement and the advocacy is really increased in my heart. So how it'll happen, I don't know.
Well, I would love to hear more about what you do on a daily basis in clinic. You're working in an immigration shelter. What does that look like? What kind of patients are you seeing?
Well, I wanted to work at the immigration shelter because I'm from the border area of Texas, deep South Texas. And the number one question I would get in DC was, how is the border crisis? Again, I'm bipartisan, and I couldn't get anybody to give me that bipartisan point of view. Everybody's either my way's better, or this is crisis, da da da. And so, and selfishly, my grandparents came from Mexico, and I wanted to see what it was like. It's it's very hard work. I cry once a week with the patient. I serve as children, but it's very rewarding. It was a great. I'm grateful to my friend who helped me get into this because I had not seen a patient in a year, and I had not seen a child since 2020. So I didn't want to. I was scared, quite frankly, to get back into the clinic. It's kind of, you get off the bike and you're like, can I ride it again? And so I finally got my groove back, like the movie. And I forgot how much I miss it. I love being in front of the patient. But more than anything, I'm on the White House Fellowship Board. So now I have an answer. Now I have a bipartisan answer of what I think is good and what I think is bad.
Have you ever wondered if your malpractice policy is providing you with enough coverage? Turns out that employers' policies protect their interest and not necessarily yours. CM&F Group offers personal liability protection that adapts to your growing, changing responsibilities, including state compacts and allowing for protection for practicing medicine across state lines. From telemedicine to license and HIPAA defense, if it's something that you need protection for, CM&F has you covered. PA students can even enjoy a completely free student policy from your first day as a student until you become a licensed PAC. In a climate where we are hyper aware of charting wording, covering ourselves, and constantly worried about practicing defensive medicine, you can't leave your liability coverage up to chance. Enjoy the peace of mind, exceptional customer service, and find the best comprehensive coverage that fits your practice at www.cmfgroup.com/the PA is in, or click the link in the show notes. What words do you have for the listener who is like, advocacy is nebulous? Like, who the person who's listening and they're like, sure, I think we should advocate. I think we should advocate for our patients. I think we should advocate for ourselves. What does that actually mean in terms of things that that listener can do today, this week, this year to actually make a measurable difference in the way that they're seeing patients, in the way that healthcare is administered, in the way that PAs are treated or compensated, all of these things? What can that person actually do?
I say number one, Google fellowships. I didn't know this. The White House Fellowship is not the only fellowship in this great country. There's actually a lot of fellowships on the East Coast mostly, and that welcome all walks of life. We need more PAs in front of people and making, again, the policy, but also reminding them about our profession. I did a lot of recruiting, and because the White House Fellowship hasn't had a nurse in 30 years. So I helped all these deans from these universities recruit nurses. And they are applied, and not one PA applied from my understanding. I'm like, guys, we got to get moving. I get it. It's hard. I don't know how we're going to do it. But I think the more involved we are, the more we're in front of these people, the more they'll realize the value of this profession. And that's just my game plan, and we'll see where it gets me. But I think, remember, as we've spoken about before, like there's consulting services, like AAPA's slogan, PAs can do that. There's so many corporate companies looking for people like us. I know one of my side gigs is I review charts for a law firm. I'm not the expert witness, but I review the chart and I'm like, oh, let's look at this and that. I think PAs actually, our strength was as the physical exam. I think we do it better than anybody, but that's my personal opinion. And I
think we do just about everything better than anybody. So
yeah. So when I go through my charts, I'm very diligent of like, yeah, that doesn't really seem right, because if you did the physical exam this way, da da da. And I speak to a lot of PA programs, and I try to reiterate how above par we are. And I attribute that to training. Is there work to be done in the academia of PA school? Yes. I've come to find out in speaking to lots of PA schools. I thought mine was the only one, but we need a little bit of help in those areas. But hats off to those educators, because they're doing something right. Look at how we stand out compared to our peers. But nothing's perfect. There's always room for improvement. And these PA programs are awesome to call me in and say, hey, Vanessa, speak to the students, because you hit them when they're young, young, quote unquote, young PAs coming out, so that they can see what took us a couple of years to see,
Absolutely. So I can hear from you that you are just an incredibly hard worker, and that you are multi-passionate, that you have all of these irons in the fire, and you want to do a lot of things. How is that going from a work-life balance standpoint? Do you feel like you have much better balance? Do you have boundaries that are strong and enforced? What does that look like for you?
Yes, I've gotten really well at saying no. I mean, after big surges in COVID, my company that I initially worked with said, "Hey, I had just finished 112 days straight," and they said, "Hey, we have another project in Dallas," and I said, "No, not even going to." And so in my in my resume, in my PA lifeline, it looks funny because I took a month off during my fellowship. Um, there was a little. It wasn't an easy road. My uncle was dying from pancreatic cancer. I'm the only one in medicine in my family, so he died in May. My mother got diagnosed with breast cancer at the end of May. Thank goodness it was stage 1, but she had a double mastectomy while I was in the fellowship. I come home to take care of her as she's recovering, and 6 weeks later, my grandmother passes away from a stroke. So I took a few months off. I said, I need a break. I can go um, full force, but sometimes we just need to say no, and we need to re- we really need to go inside and look at what's next. And that's why I say, when people ask, what are you going to do? What's going on? I always say, well, the Lord will tell me, which I totally believe. Um, but I also have to feel it in my heart. What's the sole purpose of this? And it's great to say no. It's awesome because you get to a point where what's my priority in life, and I really think you hit it the nail on the head where we can advocate, but I have a peer who'll help me. We're a team, and it doesn't have to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people get concerned about gaps in employment or leaving a position after a short period of time. And they are always saying to themselves, how can I explain this to a future employer? How can I tell them why I left so quickly, or why I took this break, or that I took a year or two off when someone was sick or one of my kids was born? Because you're a human being. Because you're a human being and you're living a human life where things go wrong or go really well, or you get some opportunity and you say yes to that, which means you say no to full-time employment, or you say no to some other opportunity, or the job was toxic. And there is always a way to explain in a way that seems very reasonable. Here's what was going on, right? Here's what was going on. You paint it in as positive/neutral a light as you can, and then you move on, because we're so in demand that a little gap in employment is not going to mean that you're not employable, or that people are going to be super, super suspicious about that part of your job history.
No, and honestly, people, I help people interview for fellowships. Authenticity is what interviewers want. I think that's what helped me in my 30 interviews to become a White House Fellow. I was just authentic. The one group was grilling me. Why, Vanessa? Why do you want to be a White House Fellow? Like, they were grilling me hard, and I said, "All right, straight up, I need more credibility." I said, at home, it doesn't matter how you cut the cake. In some people's eyes, I'm just a PA. Oh, just a PA took care of it. But if I go to the highest levels of the government and my profession is recognized as being important to have a seat at the table, then hopefully I'll do more. And so, and they appreciated it. So, and I do believe in gaps. Just take a gap. It's like you said, we're in demand. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Vanessa, I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us all about your experience. If people are listening and they're thinking, I need more of Vanessa in my life, where is a great place that they can go to follow or connect with you online?
Sure. Well, I think you can email me, I guess, vanessacpac@gmail.com. Um, my Instagram handle is Vannie Coby, VANNIECOBY. Maybe that'll change one day. But I was actually in PA school, so I didn't use my real name because I didn't want distractions. So I've never changed my Instagram handle.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate everybody for what y'all do. Keep up the good fight, and glad to be a part of this. And thank you, Tracy, for having this platform. I know a lot of people listening.
I love any conversation that reminds us that we are multi-passionate and that we have this opportunity to have multifaceted careers. And just because we haven't done something before doesn't mean that we can't find passion and purpose around the next corner in our career. I hope that this episode encouraged you to have some self-reflection and build some effective boundaries, but also to think strategically about what your next career move is and how you're going to get from where you are to where you're going. If you need help with that, check the links in the show note for a free consultation call to see if me or someone on our team can help you make your next strategic career move. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations. You've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.